and we'll get this show started. Perfect. All right. So just to remind you guys of the role that I have here at the college. So I am the student success specialist. You could also say my title is a student support specialist. And so my job is basically to help you guys be successful students. And so maybe you are struggling with juggling your class time with your personal life and your work schedule. Maybe you're noticing that your study strategies or study techniques aren't really helping you to retain the information. And maybe you've been struggling with passing your exams. Or, like we're going to talk about today, maybe you struggle with some test anxiety and you want to learn how to more confidently perform successfully on your exams. And so I do workshops, I do presentations, but you can also easily reach out to me by my email if you want a one on one session and we can work together, kind of talk about your personal circumstances and how we can work with your schedule to help you to feel more confident throughout the semester. So I'm here for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and we're going to jump right into it. And I was saying this earlier, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask, while I'm talking. And also, you can leave a comment. I may not be able to easily see that comment though, since I'm sharing my screen. And then I'll also try to leave time after the presentation for you guys to ask any questions. Can everyone see the presentation slide?
Yeah,
Okay.
looks good.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so I'm going to get started then with just the objective of this presentation. So first, we're going to identify some more of the common causes of test anxiety, why it is a problem for so many people. And then we're going to dig into the real meat of this presentation about implementing methods and strategies into your daily routine and on testing day that can help to alleviate the stress associated with test taking. Okay, so why is it a problem? Poor SpongeBob, he could like never pass his driving test. But I think it's safe to say all of us here have probably felt that same way while taking an exam. Um, those feelings of nerves and butterflies are very, very common when you're about to prove to another person, to an organization, or just to yourself the knowledge that you have learned. So, first, it's good just to keep in mind that a little bit of nerves is a normal thing. In fact, those feelings of nerves and butterflies are an indicator that you care about your performance as a student, you care about the outcome of this exam and of your overall success. So, it's actually a normal thing that can help you to perform better within reason, right? Being overconfident can actually be kind of a trap. And there are actually two categories of test anxiety, we'll say. And so one are realistic fears. So maybe these are fears that are based off of actual realities. For example, maybe you were actually unprepared for that exam. You didn't study well enough or you didn't study effectively. And then also fear of failing an exam or course, kind of related to being unprepared. But what is also true of realistic fears is there is a solution to that problem. So if you want to pass this exam, you're going to maintain a good study routine in order to be confident with the material. And then the other category is referred to as unfounded fears. So these are fears that don't necessarily require a solution. They require a change in your perspective. Okay, so maybe your anxiety is associated with disappointing others. Maybe a lot of people have helped you get to this place of being accepted into nursing school, and you don't want to let other people down. Or maybe you have the tendency of comparing yourself to others. Maybe you notice that one of your fellow classmates seems to just be flying through the exams, flying through each course, and you start to feel a little negative about yourself. And then also perfectionism. So just having too high of expectations of yourself. These are common sources of anxiety, but again, they require more so a change in our perspective of ourselves and of our performance. We want to focus more on your own journey, your own goals, as opposed to what others expect from you or how you are doing in comparison to other people. So if you feel like perfectionism is something that you struggle with, and I feel like in the medical field, in the nursing field, a lot is expected of you um, as when you're, on the ground working in the field. So you may naturally have that tendency of having very high expectations of yourself because there is a lot of pressure on a nurse to perform well, to get the job done well, efficiently, and correctly. But that's where we need to have that realistic view of ourselves. And I really like this picture, this illustration on this slide, because it helps us to understand what's the difference between perfectionism and excellence. We should all be striving for excellence, but you can see from point A to point B, excellence is not a straight line. It's got a lot of dips and curves, U-turns, obstacles. So, again, realizing and recognizing that your journey is going to include some ups and downs. It's going to include some trips, but as long as you take those moments and look at them as an opportunity for growth and learning from your mistakes, then you can continue on to that path of excellence. Perfectionism, it's just not attainable, right? And when you're studying for an exam, you're not going to remember everything from your textbook verbatim or word for word. You want to focus on the main concepts and then perhaps examples that go along with those main concepts. But just expect that you may get one or two questions wrong, and that's okay. And you guys probably have experienced this with your history of test taking. Professors do at times like to put in that curveball question where they're trying to see, who actually read the footnotes in that chapter or, who actually did the full review of that chapter. And so it's there to kind of make you think maybe a little more deeply. If you miss that question, it's okay. It's not the end of the world as long as you're understanding, again, the main concepts. And then also, guys, it's really important to reminisce on your success. You guys have passed your prerequisites. You guys have put in the hard work to be accepted as nursing students into this program, and you're about to take on this challenging program, but you're here. So, reminiscing on your past success, on what you've already accomplished, can help you to recognize that you are very capable of being successful this semester as well. Okay, so now that we've kind of given ourselves a pep talk and we've got a realistic perspective of ourselves, now let's really dig into the dirt here of what do we need to do to alleviate test anxiety. And the first step is actually knowing the material and preparing for this exam. Okay, so ask yourself, how are my study habits? How often am I studying per day? And what length of time am I studying per day? If you were present during my presentation on orientation day, I mentioned that the general rule of thumb has been for every 1 hour of class time, we should be studying 3 hours average for that class. But that's going to differ based on your familiarity and overall knowledge of the material. So you may really understand a concept from one chapter in your book, but you may be struggling more with understanding the material in the next chapter. That means you need to dedicate more time to studying that material that is difficult for you, testing yourself, and making it more, putting a little bit more focus on the material that's harder for you to understand. But then are you committing? So are you committing to that schedule that you set for yourself? So if you've decided to study for your pharmacology class an hour a day, are you actually doing that? Or are you noticing that you're procrastinating a little bit or putting it off for the next day? So being accountable is definitely important. And then how are you studying? Oops. Oh goodness, sorry. How are you studying? So um, if you have a one-on-one session with me, one of the first things that I'm going to say is you want to use proactive study methods. You want to use methods that are forcing you to test yourself on the knowledge that you have just learned. Okay, because when you're initially introduced to new material, that information is going to be stored into the short-term memory bank of your brain. Then you have to really put in the hard work and give yourself kind of little quizzes. So, read a section of material, then maybe cover it over and jot down on a piece of paper, what do I remember from this section of the lecture or this section of the textbook? And then once you've written down what you remember, compare that to what the actual answer is and see where you lay. Am I actually getting these answers right? Am I understanding the why behind these new concepts? Forming a study group also is something that's very recommended, very encouraged, because as a community, when we come together and share knowledge, it's kind of a two-way street. Like we benefit from teaching another person what we understand, and then we also benefit from another person explaining a concept that was difficult for us to understand. So there's just an interchange of information and knowledge occurring between a group of people that is really recommended. And also on the bottom of this slide, there is a link. I mentioned this also on orientation to a webpage called learningscientists.org. And so these are a group of scientists who actually study what learning or study strategies are the most effective in people. And so these include study strategies like spacing out the amount of time per day that you are studying. So maybe you have a study session in the morning and another one in the afternoon. This also includes a process that's referred to as interleaving, where you study a variety of information per day as opposed to focusing only on one topic for a full like 2-hour session. Putting in a little bit of variety into your study sessions helps to keep your brain stimulated and forces it to go through the learning process in a more proactive way. And there's 6 methods, strategies mentioned on that webpage. And also, again, if you have a one-on-one session with me, I'll kind of talk with you and see what strategies you feel like are effective. And then I'll encourage you to implement those strategies into your study routine. So again, just to kind of recap, what's important here is making sure, number one, you know the material and are confident with the material. Okay, cramming. Cramming is not your friend. I'm going to actually ask you guys, if we've got a willing volunteer, um, why do you think cramming is bad? And you can feel free to unmute yourself.
It's
You
a
just
short-term
memorize.
memory only, and it doesn't actually like compute long-term. You're not able to really focus and like hold on to that information.
Absolutely. Perfect. I heard someone else jump in too. Was that about the same thing that you were going to say?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
I couldn't have said
Yeah.
it better myself.
Good. Yeah. That was perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. It was like you were reading my presentation notes, like word for word. That was awesome. Exactly. So cramming the night before an exam is a big no-no. Try to avoid it, guys. Because exactly like we just heard, you're only relying on your short-term memory power. So you're just filling yourself with as much information as quickly as possible, and then you're hoping the next day when you take your test that you've still got some of those mental files in your short-term memory. It's not a way. You're not actually learning. You're just temporarily memorizing the material. It's not an effective strategy for storing knowledge or newly learned material for future real life application. And if you think about it, you guys aren't just trying to pass an exam. You are trying to learn new skills and complicated concepts to apply to your job as nurses in the future. So you don't want to just cram this information and then forget it later. You want to actually understand, again, the basics, the foundation of this information. And actually, what's ironic about cramming is it creates more anxiety. So you're reacting off of a nervous, anxious emotion, and that's just going to create more anxiety during the exam. Whereas if you're keeping a nice steady flow with your study routine, you're going to feel confident about the material because you have regularly been feeding yourself at a steady pace, a nice healthy diet of material day to day. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of knowing the material and maintaining a good study routine. So there are other ways in which you can be proactive. So, for example, inform yourself before the day of exam, inform yourself on the structure of the exam. So, um, maybe as your exam day is approaching, or give yourself a few days, maybe even a week before the exam, you can approach your professor and ask, is this going to be a multiple choice or a written answer exam? Is there a time limit? And I think I would say it's safe to say there probably is going to be a time limit. Is it an open book exam or a closed book exam? Because that's definitely going to change your approach on the way you take your exam. So, making sure to maintain communication with your professor. You can even ask them if they feel like you are struggling with certain concepts that you need to give or direct more attention or focus to. You could ask to see examples of previous exams and look at your grade from those previous exams. Look at the questions that you tended to get wrong and look for any trends. That's going to help you to determine, again, where you need to refocus your time during your study sessions. And then also look at your previous homework assignments too. Same thing, because if you're tending to get the same kind of answers wrong, that means that you still haven't really grasped the concept um, related to a certain topic or maybe a chapter in a book that was just more difficult for you. So the more you know, the better you feel. You can prepare yourself by understanding the structure of the exam, and then you can prepare yourself by looking at your past performance to help you figure out what you need to focus on prior to the exam, what you need to focus on studying. Okay, so now we've been talking a lot about prep work, what we can do before the exam. Now let's go ahead and talk about what we can do during the exam, the day of. Okay, so arrive on time, or even better, arrive early. So make sure and try not to overload your schedule prior to that exam as much as possible. Life gets in the way, things come up, we have obligations. And so if you need to do things prior to coming into that classroom to take that exam, that's understandable, absolutely. But be aware of what your schedule is going to be like on that day. So if you know, I have a test in the afternoon, but I have a work shift in the morning, okay, arrange your schedule so that you're giving yourself enough time to get in those good study sessions prior to your work shift, so that by your work shift, you're not feeling overwhelmed or nervous about the exam because you've already scheduled your time wisely. Again, try to arrive early so that way you can set your station up. Make sure to bring all of the supplies needed and allowed for the exam. So that could include calculator, pen, note, paper. If it is an open book exam, I think a lot of people that kind of takes some of the stress off when they find out that they have an open book exam. But scrolling through a textbook or scrolling through your notes can take up some of the time, especially when you have a time limit when you're taking that test. So I recommend labeling your textbook. Maybe you can even use color-coded labels to or to be able to easily access the chapters that you know this exam is going to be based on, some of those main points or important points that you know you're going to need to look back on. So labeling your notes in your textbook or bookmarking them for easy access is going to help you to quickly identify the material that you need to look for to find the answer. So this may be a helpful tip for you or not, but if you know that you've got a time limit and you know how many questions are going to be on the exam, you can pre-calculate the number of minutes or the limit of time to be dedicated to each question based on the overall time limit and the number of questions. So let's say you do that math and you figure that, okay, I can spend on average 2 minutes per test question. And then what's most likely going to happen is the information that you understand well, you're going to identify that answer quickly, and that gives you a little bit more time for really thoroughly looking at the question that's a little bit more challenging for you. But if you have an overall idea, that can again just kind of prepare you for how much time you should be spending on each question so that you're not wasting your time, basically. And I would also recommend too, again, using proactive study methods. When you feel like you've got a good handle on the material, test your knowledge, but time yourself too. So maybe give yourself like a 10-minute time limit and see if you create some kind of quiz list of questions for yourself, and then see if you can finish answering those questions within that 10-minute time period, and then see if you actually got the answers right. So that just preps you. It preps you for being in a little bit more of a high stress environment. And then when you're looking at each question, thoroughly read that question, which is again why it's good to make sure we're staying on track with your time, because you may be dedicating too much time to the first half of the exam, and then the second half you just rush through reading those questions and you actually miss those important keywords. So thoroughly read each question. If it's allowed, have a separate sheet of paper with you to take notes, to jot down action words, main points, and objectives from each question. So the words that stand out to you in that question, write it down. So maybe you need to identify or you need to look at a set of symptoms and identify the disease associated with those symptoms. So write down the symptoms of that disease and then look at that sheet of paper and ask yourself, okay, based off of what I have studied, what I have learned, these symptoms that I've written down look like this disease. So writing things down helps you to just conceptualize the material, to process it in a way that your brain understands. And once you've selected your answer, I would also say work backwards. So you've selected your answer, insert that answer into the question. Okay, so this is telling you a patient presents with these symptoms. What disease most likely is this patient going to be diagnosed with? You've selected that disease. Okay, this patient has this disease because they are presenting with these symptoms. So work in reverse once you've selected your answer. And again, that's going to help you to rationalize what you have chosen. Once you're confident about your answer, don't go back. Don't second guess yourself. It's the most frustrating thing in the world, and you guys have probably experienced this. When you're reading a test question, you select an answer, you psych yourself out, you select another answer, then you get your grade and you realize, oh my goodness, my original answer was the right one. That's like the most frustrating thing in the world. So rely on your study routine, rely on the material that you know and are confident about. When you've selected your answer, trust yourself and then move on. Okay. Now let's say you're taking the exam and you're actually experiencing some pretty intense anxiety. So maybe you're starting to feel your heart rate increase, maybe your breathing is starting to increase, maybe you're perspiring. That's okay. Take a moment to yourself. There's an article from the Brown University website that recommends that during intense anxiety or very anxiety inducing moments, close your eyes, inhale for 7 seconds, exhale for 7 seconds, open your eyes, and give yourself a positive self talk. What can that positive self talk be? I am okay. I will pass this exam. I know this material. I can do this. Don't worry if other people look at you and are like, why is she whispering to herself? Don't worry about it. This is about you. This is about your journey. This is about your success with passing this exam. And if you need to take a moment for a very quick breather, do it, because those few seconds can help you to refocus, can even help to kind of decrease that heart rate and help you to just look at what's right in front of you instead of allowing your thoughts to spiral into, oh no, I don't understand this question. So that means I'm not going to pass the exam. I'm going to fail the course. Nope. Stop. Take a breather. Look at that question again. Look at the key points, key words in that answer, and trust in yourself and in the knowledge that you have. It can help maybe to kind of tilt your head too. While you're taking an exam, you may not be able to like get up and stretch. And then I also know with some of the online exams you guys take, you're using this system called Proctorio or other systems that will record your movement. So you may not actually be able to get up and stretch, but again, like moving your neck might help, but trying that breathing exercise can be really helpful. Okay, and of course, you guys, self-care. We're always going to be proponents for self-care. So, did you get a good night's sleep the day prior to that exam? As you guys know, it's recommended to try and get 8 hours of sleep. As adults, that's not always realistic for us. Try to be somewhere in the 6 to 8 window. Try to schedule your time ahead of time so that you're allowing yourself to sleep instead of cramming. Once you have finished your scheduled study session, close your textbook, take care of yourself, eat a good meal, hydrate yourself, exercise, enjoy the physical activities that make you feel rejuvenated, energized. I know some students who will actually like to go to the gym prior to an exam. And I mean, those endorphins that run through your bloodstream after working out can be the difference between a good day and a bad day, I feel like. So making sure that you are staying balanced with your routine and not forgetting to take care of yourself is really important also. That's going to help to change your perspective on test day. All right, guys. So in conclusion, these are the things that we talked about. Don't expect perfection. Strive for excellence. Excellence is much better than perfection because it means that you actually put in the hard work and you didn't give up even in those difficult moments where maybe you did make some mistakes. Maintain good proactive study habits. So stick to that routine, that study routine that you set for yourself, and make sure the strategies you're using are actually effective for helping you to absorb the information, retain it, and be able to then demonstrate that knowledge to another person or on an exam. Again, just be proactive with those study methods. Also, familiarizing yourself with the structure of the exam, having as much information as you need prior to the exam day is going to help you to feel prepared. While you're taking the exam, arrive on time with all of your supplies needed. If you're experiencing some really intense anxiety, take a moment to take those deep breaths and then look at that question in a different perspective and just attack each question one by one. I will say too, if you feel like you're struggling with generalized anxiety, if you feel like you implement all of these steps and you're still, it's really hard for you to focus while you're taking an exam, there are many resources available to you guys as students. I'm here. There are other departments as students that you guys can reach out to that you can ask, for me to help you with, other faculty or people on campus. And if you feel like it's also more of a mental health concern for you, of course, we're always going to encourage you to take care of yourself. Again, self-care. So maybe some looking at other possibilities outside of the scope of what's available to you on campus might help too. And I will say that I have worked with students with generalized anxiety and ADHD. And again, it's just a matter of talking one-on-one and figuring out what works for you, what is a challenge for you, and then creating kind of a personalized system for yourself so that you're successful with studying and test taking and just overall student life. Okay, so these are some resources that you might find helpful. I will talk to the right people to make this PowerPoint available to you guys. But study tools, Quizlet and Evernote are pretty well-known study apps that you can put onto your devices. You can record, you can take notes, create flashcards, you can sync it up to your other devices so that whenever you are ready to study, you can just whip out your phone and start quizzing yourself. This is a link to a time management system that I also spoke about briefly during orientation. If you feel like you want some help or kind of a guide with managing your time and your study time. And then also this is my email that you guys can reach out to me directly if you are interested in a one-on-one session. I would be more than happy to meet with you and talk. Well, that is all that I have, guys. Any questions? Anything you would like me to go over again?
I have a quick question for you.
Yes. Let's talk.
ADD, generalized anxiety. I'm one of those people.
Okay.
For regularly, in terms of like just getting in a routine of studying constantly, and routines are really important for me. Do you recommend like blocking off time, same time every week, like to just buckle down and know that that's a good time for you? Or do you find that can be too much for some people?
I say do what works for you. So if that means that you have to set a exact time for studying every single day, and if you know that that's going to be productive for you, that you're actually going to follow through with studying at that exact time every day, do it. Because what you're looking for is consistency that works for you. And a lot of this also has to do with time management. So if you've got a daily planner, or if you've got an organizer, or if you're using the calendar that's on your phone, I know also that you guys have access to Canvas, and there's a calendar that will sync up with your schedules. But if you're using some kind of organizer system and inputting into that system the times that you have class, the times that you're going to study, anything that's going to help to keep holding you accountable for what you set out to do is going to result in the best probability of you actually being successful with accomplishing those tasks. And I always say the more detail oriented you are with your daily planner, the better it's going to be. So what I recommend is taking a day out of your week that you don't have a lot of things going on, looking at your weekly calendar and writing down Monday to Friday what you're going to be doing every day and at what time you're going to be doing those things. And it could be as detail oriented as when am I going to have breakfast today? I'm going to have breakfast at 8 a.m. and then at 9 a.m. I'm commuting. That's going to take about 20 minutes. Then I have this class. Then in the afternoon from 12 to 1, I'm studying. Being as detail oriented as you can with your daily planner is going to help you to stay on track and actually follow through with what you set out to do. Was that a very wordy answer to your question, Amanda?
Yes, I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for asking. Yeah. And it's interesting, but generalized anxiety, ADHD, it is something that many adults do deal with. And I've worked with quite a few students who have these same concerns and the same questions. So also being willing to talk about it and being willing to find solutions, I would say is the first step to helping you feel more organized and more confident.
You'll probably get an email from me for a one-on-one session here soon.
All right, Amanda, I look forward to it.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's more related to like a professor per professor type thing.
Mhm,
So in the past, when I've had exams on Canvas, and I know that we do have some like quizzes and exams on there,
mhm.
certain ones you're not allowed to go back. So like
Yeah.
once you answer the question, you can, and I think that's probably like something that really gives me anxiety for tests, because
Mhm.
I'm one of those people that I want to go back and I want to check those answers. Do you know if that's something that they do with this program, or is that kind of a per professor thing?
I will tell you, I know that you're going to encounter that
Mhm.
based off of students that I've worked with in the past,
Okay.
that a lot of the quizzes and exams are structured in that same way, where once you select your answer, you submit it, and then you have to move on.
Okay.
So that is why I was saying earlier, if you're thoroughly reading that question, identifying the action words, the keywords, and then jotting that information down,
Mhm.
that's going to help you come to the right conclusion.
Okay.
Once you've selected your answer, be confident about it. Don't second guess yourself because, oh, that's when you run into that trap of
Yeah.
accidentally selecting the wrong answer. Um, and I would say too, I mentioned this also, when you're studying, set up an environment for yourself that's similar to a test. So time yourself, create a little quiz for you, write down a set of questions that you have to answer, time yourself, and then, you know, make up this rule for yourself. Once I've written down that answer, I'm going to move on to my next question. That's going to get you into the habit of that higher stress environment when you're taking the actual exam. That's a good question. All right, guys, I'm going to stop sharing. You guys are all good. And then again, I'll try and make sure that this PowerPoint is accessible to you guys so you can look up those websites and links. Yeah, that's all I've got. So in general, how are you guys feeling about getting your first semester started?
Nervous.
A little nervous, yeah.
Nervous.
Yeah, I think oh, I'm so sorry, Lauren.
Oh, you're fine.
I was going to say just the fact that, we have all this information, but we don't have a great idea on structure or professors at this point. So there's
Yeah.
still that like initial hurdle of we don't have a lot of information. But
Mhm.
once we get there, I feel like I'll feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. The unknown, venturing into the unknown is always intimidating and a little scary. But hopefully it helps to hear each other and to know, okay, I'm not the only one who's like biting my nails right now, who's feeling a little like a deer in headlights. You guys are all experiencing that right now. So communicating with each other, supporting each other is going to be really helpful. And you guys are going to get into the swing of it so quickly. I bet once you're a month into like a month, at least a month into the semester, you'll feel like, I got this. I got this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.